Howdy, one and all. Welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide here on the Vida television network. Jam-packed show for you tonight, so let's just get started with how you can get in touch with the program. Jump onto social media at Chris Salcedo TX, at ChrisSalcedotX as in Texas, or go to chrissalcedo.com. Drop an email, drop a voicemail, and we will do our best to get your issues addressed. You guys know about the accusations of sexual misconduct. Now, many of them have been leveled at liberals, at Democrats. Robert Menendez, Democrat, United States Senate. Al Franken, Democrat, United States Senate. Virtually all of Hollywood, most of them liberal extremist Democrats or donate to Democrats. So now let's you and I discuss about how the press takes this knowledge. And yeah, we got to mention Roy Moore as well. By the way, when all of these accusations that he had allegedly done what he was alleged to have done, he was a Democrat at the time. I just got to point that out. At any rate, all of the attention from these myriad liberals stepping out of line has been diverted, at least attempted by the basket of bias press, to be diverted back toward the president of the United States, and using Al Franken as the stepping off point. One of the members of the basket of bias, her name is April somebody or other, trying to basically say, well, what about the president's sexual allegations?
If it's fair to investigate Al Franken and the allegation made by his accuser, is it also fair to investigate this president and the allegations of sexual misconduct made against him by more than a dozen women?
Okay, that's not April somebody or other. She asks a follow-up question. Anyway, I'm not even sure who that is. But the broader point is, the basket of bias press is trying to say, let's all ignore all the Democrat malfeasance and let's focus in on Donald Trump. By the way, many of his accusers have recanted their accusations or have not been proven credible. And Donald Trump has flatly refused all of them.
I think that this was covered pretty extensively during the campaign. We addressed that then. The American people, I think, spoke very loud and clear when they elected this president.
But how is this different?
I think in one case specifically, Senator Franken has admitted wrongdoing and the president hasn't. I think that's a very clear distinction.
Yeah, I didn't say refused. I should have said refuted. President Trump has refuted every claim against him. Al Franken, the press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, is absolutely correct. Al Franken has admitted he did something wrong. But the press doesn't want to pay attention to somebody who admitted to sexual misconduct. They have to go back to allegations against the president. This whole thing has opened up a can of worms on a previous president. His name is William Jefferson Clinton. Now, I think I may have mentioned this on a previous show, but I want to explore this. That's Jake Tapper from CNN. Listen to his take on the Clinton years.
The accusers of Bill Clinton back in the 90s were never given the credence and treated with the same respect that these women are being treated. And I think that there is something to be said about how society has evolved since then. But in addition, it's hard not to look back at that period and think, you know what, the media treated those women poorly.
Okay. What do you think's going on here? Do you think that the basket of bias press and the Democrats who populate it are all of a sudden growing a conscience? Do you think that's what's going on? Let me tell you what's going on. It started with Donna Brazil's book, throwing Hillary Clinton out of the bus where she richly deserves to be. Basically telling the truth about Hillary Clinton is throwing her under the bus. It started there. The Democrat Party is trying to get rid of the Clintons. They don't want them anywhere near the party. Now, what was Hillary Clinton's greatest asset? William Jefferson Clinton, Bill Clinton. Folks, Jake Tapper's not the only one. Chris Hayes over at MSNBC, he did the same thing. The Atlantic Magazine, a liberal rag, did the same thing. It's all over media right now. Everybody's dumping on Bill Clinton. Why? Because they're trying to make sure the Clintons can never make a comeback in the Democrat Party. They never want to deal with the Clintons ever again. They want to move on to a more progressive, a younger, hip Democrat Party, the socialists. And they want to leave the Clintons in their rearview mirror. This is what's going on here. Case in point, the current leftists who are in Congress seem to be immune from this, i.e. Al Franken. By the way, let's hear about Bill Clinton a little bit more before we get on
That,
that.
as that cultural shift takes place, some people have argued, some Democrats and liberals have argued that a reevaluation of Bill Clinton's presidency is required. What do you think about that in order to be clear about what the new standard is and use, elements from the past that are well known?
See, CBS got the memo. CBS's Face the Nation got the memo. Jackie Spear, of course, one of the Democrats who let us know about this slush fund up on Capitol Hill that's paying off sexual those who are accusing members of Congress of being sexual abusers. But notice, everybody got the memo. It's dump on Bill Clinton because the Democrat Party and the party elites have signaled it's time to shelve the Clintons, and the basket of biased press, as they always do, is doing the heavy lifting for the Democrat Party.
Well, first of all, let's remember that he did face impeachment. It wasn't as if it was just tossed to the side.
No. He faced impeachment for lying. He faced impeachment for lying about his affair with Monica Lewinsky. Jackie Spear, you are a dishonest Democrat, which is kind of redundant. You're dishonest because you know full well that Bill Clinton has never stood a day for the rape allegations against him, for the sexual assault allegations against him.
Faced impeachment. I think that the victims who came forward were not treated as they should have been. They should have been believed because, as I pointed out, most people who come forward are telling the truth.
So now that's the standard. Most people who come forward are telling the truth, except for if it's a sitting U.S. senator by the name of Al Franken.
In the case of Al Franken, what's your feeling about that? There have been some columnists who've written that basically, again, liberals have said he must leave the Senate in order for Democrats to retain their credibility on this issue, or else they're open to the charge that Democrats apply it when it comes to Republicans, but are more generous when it comes to their own team. Before
Jackie Spear answers, remember what she said. They should be believed. They are telling the truth. So if they're telling the truth, if Leanne Tweeden is telling the truth about the senator from Minnesota, Al Franken, then why should he stay? Why should he be in the Senate, Jackie Spear? Now let's see if she holds to a current serving member in government of the Democrat Party as opposed to a guy who hasn't been president in about 20, 25 years.
I think it's appropriate for the Ethics Committee to do an investigation. Senator Franken has actually agreed to that as well. I also think that it has to be determined if there's a pattern of sexual harassment. Incidents have to be severe, or they have to be ones that happen over a period of time. So I think we'll wait and see what the investigation determines.
Yeah. Is that an instructive distinction then, pattern versus...
Yeah, we're going to have to wait and see what the investigation does. We'll wait and see the investigation. Wait a minute, I thought the women were supposed to be believed. I thought that was your standard. By the way, I said 25 years ago, 1999, Bill Clinton was out of office. So let's call it 18 years ago, since Bill Clinton was president. Folks, come on. You just saw the double standard. The woman in the same dang interview. Well, Bill Clinton, the women should have been believed, but here comes Al Franken. And, well, you know what? He's a serving member of Congress. Can't do that. These people are hypocrites. That's why I don't believe they've had a change of heart. I don't believe that they're like, oh, now all of a sudden we've got to start being compassionate toward those who basically allege sexual abuse against Democrats. They don't believe it. You just saw one standard for Bill Clinton who's never going to stand for election again, and another standard for a guy who's sitting in the U.S. Senate right now. Jackie Spear, like all Democrats, a hypocrite.
Specific mistake in terms of what might penalize somebody but be the difference between penalizing and expulsion.
And that's what the courts have held with sexual harassment cases. If there's a pattern, then sexual harassment is found to be in existence. If it's a one event and it's maybe a conversation versus, sexual assault or an unwanted sexual advance. So it really depends on the circumstances in all of these cases.
It just depends. And whether or not he's serving and whether he can help the Democrats in their current electoral. That's what it all depends on. The victims, to heck with them. This was the topic of conversation on ABC's This Week. The guy who basically broke the dam on the Harvey Weinstein case. was Ronan Farrow, NBC News. Of course, NBC wouldn't publish it because right up until Ronan Farrow's piece was in the New Yorker magazine, NBC was in the practice of protecting the sexual predator who is Harvey Weinstein. But here he is talking to George Snuffleupagus.
Women came forward after years to tell stories to you, the New York Times, and other news outlets. Where does it go next?
Look, we're going to see multiple law enforcement agencies attempt to pick up where I think a lot of police officers feel the ball was dropped in the case of Harvey Weinstein. But, you know, as Carly Fiorina says, this is much bigger than just politics, than just Hollywood. This is about the abuse of power. And I have now spent a year of women telling me that they felt there was a power imbalance that kept their allegations silent. And so I think we're all going to be looking at that as a society.
Yeah, well, I think he's right. And the power imbalance up on Capitol Hill, what has been the predicate since the Bill Clinton era until today? Well, as long as you come out for abortion, as long as you come out and you're a left-wing crazy person and pretend that you're for women's rights, what you do behind the office door, what you do to women and what you threaten them with, your abuse of power, well, I'd say, okay, the Democrats will look the other way, just as Jackie Spear just showed you she was looking the other way. And so many, she's not the only one. Other Democrats are doing it too. Ronan Farrow talked a little bit more.
And Ronan Farrow, you've written these stories for the New Yorker. More are coming as well. One of the first things you see is the men not only deny in the face of those first questions, they do everything they can to quash that story.
Everything they can, and there's a system around those men, George, that enables them to quash the stories. This, I think, is at the heart of this question of, is it...
Yeah, the system in the Harvey Weinstein case was NBC News. NBC News was protecting the serial female abuser, Harvey Weinstein. But this also goes into something I just mentioned here a minute ago, and I'll probably talk with my next guest. This slush fund that's paid out $15 million on Capitol Hill, your taxpayer money, paid out $15 million to people who have accused sitting members of Congress of sexual misconduct. And we have no idea who they are. That's irresponsible use of your taxpayer money. If we're going to be paying that money out, shouldn't we know who is sexually abusing individuals up on Capitol Hill?
A watershed moment. Not just are people brave enough to come forward, but are we all as a society brave enough to actually confront the reforms necessary to the system? I mean, Jackie Spear just came out in the last few days and said Congress has paid tens of millions of dollars in settlements over the last, several decades. Now, what we need to see in terms of reform is exactly what legislators are already putting on the table around the country. Limitations on the use of secret settlements, for instance, that silence these allegations. Are we going to be able to actually change that? That's an open question.
We talked to Melanie Morgan and basically asked her about this idea of non-disclosure agreements being signed up on Capitol Hill between the accuser and the accusee. And that's why you and I can't know who the serial abusers are up on Capitol Hill. Wait a minute. You and I are paying the bill. Nobody asked us to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. We have the right to know. We are still calling on Mitch McConnell, Ryan, Schumer, and Pelosi to release those names and expel them from Congress. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. It's Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide here on the Vida Television Network, joined now by Mariana Mancuso. She is a political strategist, the founder of politicalhype.com, conservative blog focusing on Florida and national politics from a millennial's perspective. Mancuso has a strong background in communications and social media. She has worked in New York's Bureau of Fox News and NBC Universal. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
And you know what, folks? I'm not supposed to say this, but she's fighting a cold. I was hoping to inspire a Hillary Clinton moment, a coughing fit, but she actually went and got some water. So go ahead, show the folks the water. Go ahead. Yep. She's going to give Marco Rubio some pointers, and she's going to give the President of the United States some pointers. Hey, look, actually, all kidding aside, we brought you on to talk about some pretty serious stuff. This culture of female exploitation up on Capitol Hill was brought to light by, I guess we have to thank Democrat congresswomen up there on the Hill who brought to light a slush fund that people have been paid off using taxpayers' money to keep them quiet from sexual allegations that have been leveled on Capitol Hill. Give me your take on that.
Well, that's one way to spend donor dollars. The thing is that it's really unfortunate that this was even uncovered, let alone even a thing, right? So as we've seen since the Harvey Weinstein incident, we've noticed that was actually the straw that broke the camel's back. And we've seen all of these accusations fly and people come forward with their Me Too stories. And now finding this out about Capitol Hill, I think it's really basically exploded the underbelly of the Hill, much like when Tiger Woods had the incident with his ex-wife, how that kind of exposed all of the golfers and what they were doing during their time off. Yeah,
you know what? And to be very clear, this is a taxpayer-funded slush bucket of money up there. We're paying for it. And I was told, I interviewed Melanie Morgan last week on the radio show, who, by the way, we'll have that interview here on the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide, probably tomorrow, folks. Melanie Morgan is the second accuser in the Al Franken case. And she has been investigating into this slush fund, Mariana, and basically finding out that all of these people signed non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, and that is somehow preventing the American taxpayer from knowing where their money's going. I said, wait a minute. I'm a party in this. I'm a taxpayer. I didn't sign an NDA. I should know where that money's going, yes?
Absolutely. Taxpayers do have a right to know where their money's going. And as we see on the Hill, as they're trying to pass tax reform, now is not the time to be messing around.
Yeah, no kidding. And you know what? In the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide, folks, as we told you last week, we are calling on Mitch McConnell. We are calling on Senator Schumer. We are calling on Nancy Pelosi and Speaker Paul Ryan to release the names of those accused, past and present, and if they had been found guilty of sexual misconduct, they need to be met with the Roy Moore standard and expelled from Congress. That's a perfect bridge, ladies and gentlemen, to what we need to talk about with Mariana Mancuso next. Let's deal with Roy Moore, because I know you've written about this, and then we'll bridge that into the discussion about Al Franken. So what is your take on the whole Roy Moore issue?
I think that it's vile, and it just shows that we have a Senate candidate in Alabama that is morally bankrupt, and it's time for him to suspend his campaign and step down. Now
we have 7 accusers. And the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide has not taken a stance on this, basically saying, we don't know enough. We just have a whole bunch of accusers out there. Did it give you pause when Gloria Allred stepped to the microphone and she was asked point blank if the signature in accuser number 5's yearbook, if it was genuine, and Gloria Allred would not say that it wasn't a forgery?
I think what's given me pause is the fact that so many women have come forward. And another issue about that is the fact that Roy Moore has merely sidestepped everything in his allegations and said, that doesn't really speak to my character. I can't really recall that. If you did this or if you didn't do it, you'd remember. And the fact that he will not come out and adamantly say, I never did it. And then conversely, when you have supporters saying we need more evidence, what do they want? They're not going to get the blue dress like they got with Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah, okay, so you're referring to the Sean Hannity interview, which I have to say, when I heard that, red flags went up for me as well. I mean, if you're accused of something that's this heinous, your response is no, emphatically no, never happened, don't know where this is coming from, but there seemed to be some equivocation. Is that what gave you pause as well?
Absolutely. I mean, even Anthony Weiner, when he was accused of sending lewd photos via Twitter, came out and unequivocally said it was not him and that his Twitter had been hacked. So the fact that we have Roy Moore, who can't even say he didn't do it, is kind of an issue.
Yeah, I hear that. Now let's transition, if we can, to Senator Al Franken from Minnesota. Here, it's a different story. It's not a he said, she said type of thing. It is a she said, and the senator says, well, that's pretty much the way it went down. He disputes a little bit about the forced kissing that Leanne Tweeden had talked about. there are a couple of aspects of this I'm eager to get your opinion on. Number one, the response to Roy Moore, a lot of folks up on Capitol Hill have echoed you, saying that Roy Moore needs to drop out, and if he does win election, he will be expelled from the United States Senate. Now, fast forward to Robert Menendez, who is a New Jersey senator who is accused of bedding underage prostitutes in the Dominican Republic, and that accusation has not been disproven, which has been widely falsely reported. And then you've got Al Franken, who has that incriminating photograph showing him doing the very thing he's accused of doing, and a woman's very compelling testimony about this. And these guys, according to Mitch McConnell and others, they get an ethics investigation and they get the benefit of the doubt, but that same benefit of the doubt was not extended to Roy Moore. Do you see hypocrisy here?
I find that quite alarming. I also found it interesting that Al Franken immediately came out, embraced the fact that he was accused, said, I did wrong, released a statement, really owned it on the front end, which speaks volumes. While it was inappropriate what he did, and I don't condone it in any way, shape, or form, the fact that he did step up and didn't try and fight it or flander around and be like, oh, I don't really remember or whatever, really speaks to the fact that he knows that he really should have never done those things. And then he actually called the ethics investigation upon himself, which says a lot, because let me tell you, anybody on the Hill undergoing an ethics investigation, they may as well just resign. It is such a disaster, and it is so tedious that they have to dig into everything. And I am shocked that even Republicans are not coming forward and saying, with Roy Moore, he comes to the Hill, we're going to expel him. We need to now start the same process with this senator. And I'm actually a bit surprised that that's not happening.
Yeah, you know what? And that, again, a perfect transition to another bit of this whole controversy that I wanted to focus on with Marianne Mancuso, folks, political strategist, founder of politicalhype.com. It's the rank hypocrisy not being shown by Democrats, as you rightly point out, well, at least this time around, but it's by Republicans who have a standard for Roy Moore, who was accused of sexual misconduct. He's got to go. He needs to be expelled. But we have an admission by one senator that this kind of conduct was going on, and another one that is also accused, but they get ethics investigations, no calls from either from anybody on Capitol Hill for their expulsion. Is this hypocrisy?
I would say that this is a problem in the fact that people are trying to make this a partisan issue. This is not a partisan issue. This is sexual assault, and needs to be handled with. And if you're going to set a standard that a gentleman who's yet to be elected is going to be expelled off the Hill, you need to follow suit and do the exact same thing with Senator Franken, as well as Senator Menendez. And even if we want to look past into recent history, in 1984, they handled this. The Supreme Court oversaw a senator who was elected to the Hill and actually had the same issue. The Washington Post cracked open a story where he was forcing himself on women, and he was expelled from the Senate.
Yeah, well, and here's the other troubling aspect of this, something you should be able to, that's also right in your wheelhouse, the media coverage. I got to tell you that I have been astonished to see what's been coming out of the NBC properties. They have actually taken to victim shaming this Leanne Tweeden, who was the victim of Al Franken, pointing out that she's posed for Playboy and that she's attractive, and carrying the initial party line of the Democrat Party, which was, well, I don't remember exactly what happened with the whole rehearsal thing. NBC is carrying this water, and they're starting to attack Leanne Tweeden, and I find that patently unacceptable and frankly offensive.
Yeah, it's really a shame that these accusers are actually watching their victims be the scapegoat, right? So Leanne Tweeden and everything that's happening where they're starting to shame her for what she's done in the past, regardless of what you did, if you posed for Maxim or Playboy or anything, none of that validates or justifies being treated the way that she encountered. And the same thing goes with Roy Moore. I don't care if she was an 18-year-old in a miniskirt at the mall. It doesn't actually justify the actions. And I think that it's really sad because people want to make this a partisan issue, and they want to actually go out and try and justify the actions and vilify those victims. And it's unfortunate because it causes other victims not to want to come forward, and people that have done these things to continue to get away with it. Now,
you were not around because you're a millennial and you're far younger than I am. You were not around for the Clinton era. We're seeing stories coming out of left-wing bastions. The Atlantic, from NBC's Chris Hayes, from CNN's Jake Tapper that they were wrong to vilify, much the way MSNBC is doing right now to Leanne Tweeden. They were wrong to vilify William Jefferson Clinton's accusers of rape and of sexual misconduct, which is exactly what happened back in the 1990s. And there seems to be some mea culpa going on here among the left-wing press. Now, I'm going to tell you, I don't buy it because of the way they've been handling the Franken thing. And I have my own theory as to why they're doing this, throwing now Bill Clinton under the bus. Let me ask you, why do you think that the mainstream press appears to be growing a conscience all of a sudden when it comes to sexual assault from Democrats?
Well, here's the thing with Bill Clinton in the 90s, the Monica Lewinsky scandal, when that broke, I mean, that was such a moment in history and time, much like the Watergate scandal with Nixon in the 70s. And when we think about this happening with a president, a sitting president doing these things and all the other women that he had assaulted, you know, people have a hard time stomaching the fact that that could be a president. And then we not only had Bill Clinton, who was revered as a president in the 90s. I mean, he was president during the dot-com boom. He saw a lot of, very, prosperous times, if you will, in the country. And then afterwards, he continued to have that very gregarious personality where he was out and doing great things. He brought Harlem up in New York City. His wife ran for president. So it's interesting that now all of these things are kind of like, well, maybe we should have taken this a little bit seriously. And now I bet that we're calling for people to release those names on those NDAs from that slush fund.
Yep.
I'm sure we're going to see a few of those names on there that are going to seem familiar.
Well, I'll offer my own theory just so everybody knows this. And Mariana, maybe you can see if this passes your smell test. I think that the Donna Brazile book set the stage for individuals to clear the decks. The Democrat Party wants to get rid of the Clintons. And that's why now all of a sudden it's permissible to throw Hillary Clinton under the bus where she deserves to be, in my opinion. And also Bill Clinton. They don't want her trying to make another run at the presidency, and they don't want Bill Clinton to be able to swoop in and save her. So that's why you're seeing this avalanche of people going, gee, we should have really and as a matter of fact, you have Democrat lawmakers saying that Bill Clinton should have resigned back in the 90s. It's a very different story the Democrat Party in the 90s was saying, and the press as well. I can't talk about all salacious stuff our entire interview. I've got to get your impression on what's going on with taxes. The House of Representatives passed their reform package. The Senate, well, I think the Senate's trying to kill tax reform to get at Donald Trump. But what's your take on all this?
Well, here's the thing. Republicans need to get that bill passed if they want to have a fighting chance in 2018, right? That's going to be the one smoking gun that they have. They're like, hey, we did this. We came into the Congress. We had a supermajority. We promised you tax reform. We promised Obamacare repeal. 50% is not bad. I mean, we'll get it for you. But we did see it in the House. It did pass, and 13 House members on the Republican side actually voted against it. And it does raise some red flags, because if they're unable to get a full, solid majority in the House to really fall in line and vote on this, in the Senate, they're going to have an equally tough time. Remember, every Democrat voted against it. So what's going to happen in the Senate should be interesting.
Mariana Mancuso, everybody. The name of the website is politicalhype.com. And I'm sure that's got a Facebook presence. Well, you're a millennial, so it's got to have Facebook and Twitter, right?
It does, yes.
All right. Well, tell us what those are, if you know it off the top of your head.
Facebook.com, Political Hype, and on Twitter, we are at Political Hype.
All right. Great talking with you again, lady. Thanks for being here on the Chris Salcedo Show.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
All right, everybody. That's going to do it for the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide for this evening. Get in touch with the show. Voicemail or email available for you. ChrisSalcedo.com. Or if you want instantaneous feedback, go to the Twitter account at Chris Salcedo TX. Have yourselves a great night, everybody. Back here tomorrow for the Chris Salcedo Show Worldwide on the Vida Television Network.